Welcome to Really This Week in History. I'm Daniel Price. This project is intended to be mostly a blog, so whether published recordings continue is up in the air. But my expert analyst this week, Tim Crothers, had too many gems to fit into the story, so I figured I'd take a stab at creating a little podcast. Tim was my sports journalism professor at UNC Chapel Hill back in the late aughts and still holds that role. He was a senior writer at Sports Illustrated and is a regular on the New York Times bestseller list. In addition to writing Queen of Katwe, which was adapted into a fantastic film by Disney, Tim wrote the autobiography of Anson Dorrance, billion-time national championship head coach at the helm of UNC women's soccer team, and co-wrote UNC men's basketball coach Roy Williams' autobiography, Hard Work. There are links to all these in the story, so without further ado, here is our conversation. I recorded, edited, and published this podcast using the free Anchor app. It combines all the tools you need to create your own podcast with little to no experience of your own. Not only does it allow you to record right in the app, it also helps you distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more services. You can even make money from your podcast with sponsored ads with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Obviously, talking about Brady Mahomes, Super Bowl 55. It's kind of the dream matchup that every NFL fan that isn't a fan of any NFL team wanted, I think. You have 43-year-old Tom Brady and 25-year-old Patrick Mahomes. And it looks to me, and this is why I was hoping this would happen, it looks to me like very much a passing of the torch kind of game. What is your view on that? Whether it could be, whether it is, whether it won't be?
Well, as you mentioned those ages, it strikes me that, we are talking about a game between essentially two different generations. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is almost young enough, I guess in some ways he is young enough to be Tom Brady's son, which, that's kind of a bizarre way to think about it. But for those of us who have followed Tom Brady's career, it does seem like he's been in the league for a generation longer than Patrick Mahomes. And I think you are looking at a game that, on the face of it, is a passing of the torch game. I mean, I don't think there's no dispute that Tom Brady is the GOAT. And I guess you always hate to anoint anybody in any way when they've only played as little time as Pat Mahomes has put in the league. To anoint them as the GOAT in waiting it seems a bit premature, but I've watched the NFL for a long time, and it's very clear that this guy has the potential to do what Brady has done. Obviously, so much depends on so many factors, and injury is number one in those, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes nearly missed the championship game with a concussion is notable. And also, I mean, so much of it depends on those around him. I mean, I noticed that Brady made sure to credit the players around him when he was being interviewed after the game yesterday. And that factor is just massive. I mean, I think there have been other great quarterbacks that we could name along the history of the last 2 decades who might have been able to approach something close to what Brady's done had they had better parts around them. So, and Aaron Rodgers would certainly fit into that category. But yeah, there is a possibility, certainly, that we could be looking at the GOAT against the next GOAT.
And you bring up Aaron Rodgers. We were almost guaranteed a game like this. You had Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes on one side. You had Breeze, Brady, Rodgers on the other side. Mm-hmm. Breeze is, I think, 40. Rodgers, 37. Mm-hmm. Tom's 43, and then Allen at 24, Mahomes at 25. We were going to see, potentially one of the great quarterbacks of the next let's say 10 years. We used to not say 20 years, but for the next 10 to 15 years versus one of the great quarterbacks of the last 15 to 20 years. Is this era special? Like, have we ever seen this many great quarterbacks, or at least to your recollection, this many great quarterbacks playing this well at the same time?
I hadn't really thought about it that way, but now that you mention it, yeah, I think this is, in terms of guys who are nearing the end of their career but playing at an elite level, and a number of young quarterbacks, including Allen and Pat Mahomes, who are, who have just these extraordinary starts to their career. Yeah, I mean, we're in an era now where we're very lucky. It makes me wonder, yeah, when in 2 or 3 years down the line, when there's no more Brady, Brees, or Rodgers, we're going to, I don't know who's going to replace those three guys and be sort of the elder statesman of the league. I think we're more likely to have some of these young quarterbacks that we have now start to step into that void, and we could be looking at a situation where, yeah, guys like Allen and Mahomes are the ones who we just sort of watch progress throughout their career and hopefully battle for Super Bowl titles to come. I hope. I don't know that I want to see the Chiefs just become a dominant dynasty. I hope there are challengers to that team that we can look forward to in the future.
And one thing that I've kind of thought is that we're seeing, obviously the guys are playing longer. Tom Brady has his guru, his health guru, and the diets are different. The way people prepare their bodies are different. The practices are a lot less intense, from what I understand, than they used to be, which allows everybody to play longer, not just quarterbacks, but everybody. And the college game and the NFL game, to me, look like they're melding. We're seeing guys come into the league that need to learn terminology and a bigger playbook, but not necessarily a different playbook. Is this, do you think, helping quarterbacks be ready sooner, or are we seeing something very special in Mahomes and Allen?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think Mahomes in particular, his skill set is such that I don't know that we've seen somebody who can combine, the kind of arm he's got and the kind of legs that he's got, and just the smarts and the ability to create something out of nothing. I mean, I think when you watch that game yesterday, that's the thing that continues to amaze me, is that there are so many plays that just seem like they're not going to produce fruit, and the next thing you know, Mahomes is throwing it sidearm or underhand or lefty or whatever it takes to make a play out of nothing. And I think that's at this point is still what separates him, and also his ability to not make mistakes. Someone who plays as risky a game as he does, to be able to not make mistakes, or make mistakes as rarely as he does, is I think what separates him from everybody else. Is it partly because of what the college game has prepared them for? Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the difference between the way college teams operate from the NFL is different. I mean, there's a much more similarity between what guys are running in college and what they're running in the pros, and we all know that Patrick Mahomes operated in a full-scale, spread offense at Texas Tech, and he was reasonably well prepared to come into the NFL and start doing what he's doing. So yeah, I give the college game credit for part of that, but I also think that Mahomes is he's just a different cat.
And looking at it like that, I think 5 years ago we had someone that looked very similar. Came to the league after winning a national championship at Auburn, 26 years old, was MVP of the league, going against, I think, a 39-year-old Peyton Manning. He had Cam Newton playing in Super Bowl 50, Peyton Manning's last game, I think. I really hope it was. I think, yeah. And, he won the game, rode off into the sunset, and I think looking at the way that Cam Newton's career developed, maybe he should have too. Injuries obviously played a big part in that, and that's something that you talked about earlier with, the biggest, kind of the most important thing as far as whether Mahomes is the next GOAT. We had this game, Brady and Manning are as close as you could be for someone that played at the same time as Tom Brady. How many Super Bowls would Manning have won without Tom Brady in the league?
Right.
But we had a very similar game 5 years ago. Cam Newton loses. Cam Newton suffers injuries and is never the same. Obviously, I already spoke on Mahomes' concussion. He's had his turf toe. I've never seen a carbon fiber insert in a cleat before. I thought that was interesting. But you've already answered this, but are injuries you haven't answered this directly, the only thing that could stop Mahomes?
No, I think part of it is, as we discussed, also is the pieces around him. You don't know whether the situation is going to be the same. Cam Newton, part of what hurt him, I think, was the Panthers team around him was not as good after that Super Bowl. So that was a piece of it. But it's why we have to be a little bit cautionary about anointing Patrick Mahomes as the next, that he's going to, he's obviously going to eventually pass Tom Brady. Tom Brady better win this one because he needs as many as he can get, because Patrick Mahomes is definitely going to win 10 Super Bowls. Yes, we have seen people along the lines of Patrick Mahomes come and go. I do think he's special. I do think that he's at a different level, even than what I might have thought of Cam Newton at that time. Because Cam Newton as a thrower was never anywhere near what Patrick Mahomes is now, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it is a piece. It is a piece of the puzzle that you have to have those players around you. With Patrick Mahomes would not be Patrick Mahomes if it wasn't for Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Hardman. These guys have all been huge assets to what's turned him into who he is. You give other quarterbacks in the league these weapons around him, and they're going to be a lot better. Are they going to be, Patrick Mahomes Super Bowl better? I don't think so. I think I'm not giving the complementary parts as full credit for why the Chiefs are where they are today. I do think that's mostly on the shoulders of Mahomes, but you do have to, no matter how good a quarterback you are, if you don't have the players around you, you can't do it by yourself. And so, yeah, Mahomes has benefited from walking into a great situation with an excellent coach, also should be mentioned, and the coach and the player seem to complement each other, because I think we've all seen over the last few weeks that Andy Reid is a risk taker, Patrick Mahomes is a risk taker, and they really seem to be cut from the same cloth. So all of that is hugely important to why Mahomes has been so successful. But 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, will he have all these parts? Will he have this coach? Will he have, there's a million questions
right.
that need to be, that we won't know until that time passes.
Right before you brought up Andy Reid, I had to Google how old Andy Reid is. He's 62 years old. He's only 6 years younger than Bill Belichick. So, Tom Brady latched on to Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick latched on to Tom Brady. I'm not saying one was reliant on the other more than the other way around. But, Patrick Mahomes, when he's 35 years old, I can't imagine Andy Reid coaching to 72 years old. I can't imagine anybody doing it. So he's going to go through a coaching change in his prime. How, obviously we're probably 5 years from that happening. But how drastically could that change things?
We don't know. That's why we can't predict the future, because we don't know. I mean, we really don't know. Maybe by that time, Andy Reid will have found, whether it's Eric Bieniemy or whether it's somebody else who he has groomed to be his successor, who he can essentially mold into being exactly what Patrick Mahomes is looking for. That'd be great for Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, we don't know. There might, like we said, in a year or two, there's just no telling what could happen. Without Kelsey, without Tyreek Hill, potentially without Andy Reid, the Chiefs are not going to be able to do it with Patrick Mahomes alone. So yes, there's going to come a time at some point where we're not going to be talking about the same cast of characters, and should that cast, the talent and the cast around him start to drop off, that's when it'll be a true test of just how great Mahomes is. Because if you look at Brady's career, I mean, he didn't, he's done it. He was consistently did it with Belichick until this year, but the rest of the cast of characters, other than fairly consistently Gronk, has been very different over the course of his career, and he's managed to do it with different players in different ways, and that's to his credit. That's one of the reasons why he is the GOAT, and one of the reasons why it'll test Patrick Mahomes eventually to see whether he can do it with different players and possibly a different coach around him.
Perfect. So we've been talking about the last 15, 20 years, been talking about the next potentially 10 or 15 years. 13 days from today, who wins the game, gut reaction, who's MVP, and do we see the Super Bowl again next year?
Do we see the same teams?
Yes.
I don't think so. I mean, I think I haven't seen the line, but I'm ready to put the Chiefs into the repeat category. I just think that they're the better team. I look at Brady, and as good as he is, I mean, there were still some moments in that game yesterday. We all watched it where he kind of just threw it up in the air, and he's got the weapons to come down with it.
And he had 3 interceptions. It could have been more, I think.
Right. Yes, there were several that he just kind of threw up for grabs, and that's again the beauty of having a great supporting cast that helped him out at times. But yeah, I mean, to me, because neither team has a Derrick Henry, neither team has a running game that's really anything more than for show and occasionally to finish off a drive when they get down right to the goal line. Neither team is going to be running the ball down the other team's throat. So that really does leave it up to the quarterbacks and the receivers. I mean, I think I saw the box scores and the Chiefs ran for 59 yards and the Bucs ran for 71 yards. Both average about 3 or 4 yards per carry. I mean, it's just not part of either team's DNA right now. So that then it comes down in my eyes to Mahomes and his receivers against Brady and his receivers, and I like the Chiefs in that situation, and I also think that defensively I kind of see it as a wash. So to me, that's that all points to the Chiefs doing this, and so yes, if in 10 years Mahomes is starting to approach or pass Brady, then I do think we will look back at this Super Bowl as the passing of the torch. That'll be we will have been witness to history in 13 days.
Okay, thanks to Tim Crothers for that conversation. This has been the first, and who knows, maybe the last episode of Really This Week in History. Thanks for listening.